Chapter 14. A Mother's Call, a Daughter's Lie. A day after my stark realization about how the men in my life blurred into the same face, my mother received a call from Ukraine, a distant relative we had not spoken to in ages. The rings startled us both, echoing in the cramped apartment like a ghostly reminder of a home we had left behind. My mother's eyes widened as she recognized the country code. She hesitated, glancing at me, then picked up. "Allo?" Her voice quivered. I hovered close, heart pounding with nervous curiosity. Could it be someone who might help us? Or just a painful memory of a life we had abandoned? Her half of the conversation was tentative at first. Yes, it's Memo. Oh hi, yes, it's been so long." Then her face slackened with relief, a tear sliding down her cheek. She switched to rapid Ukrainian, words tumbling out. I caught bits about family gossip, illnesses, money troubles. The relative asked if we had settled well in Istanbul. My mother shot me a wary glance, voice faltering. Finally, she forced a bright, lying tone. "We are fine, yes, everything is wonderful. Istanbul is beautiful. Ina's doing great, we have a stable life." My stomach clenched, hearing her spin illusions. She continued, "I'm just a bit busy these days, but we have enough money, no worries." I saw the guilt flicker across her face. This was my mother's call, a desperate attempt to sound strong before her relative. She could not admit we were trapped, that I was selling my body, that she was living with bruises. After the call ended, she slumped into a chair, tears brimming. "I couldn't tell her the truth," she whispered. "It would break her heart." That same evening, my mother hunched over the small dining table, a stack of crumpled bills spread before her. Some were lira, some rubles, a few stray dollars, or euros gleaned from foreign clients. She carefully folded them, whispering half-formed prayers under her breath. She'd picked up this habit recently, folding money as though it were sacred, clasping it between her palms like a rosary. I suspected it was her way of coping. The dollars in particular held a certain mystique, as though they embodied the promise of a real escape. She would press them to her forehead sometimes, eyes closed, as if beseeching a higher power to grant us deliverance. When I approached, she startled, almost dropping a few bills. Her cheeks reddened. "I'm just organizing," she mumbled, tucking the folded currency into a tin, but I saw the tears in her eyes. She was turning these pieces of money into a desperate form of prayer. She rose from the table, stepping aside so I could see the mix of currencies. My breath caught. We had more saved than I realized. Between her stash and mine, we might afford fake passports, maybe even bribe a smuggler to ferry us across a border. But it was stained with the knowledge of how I had earned most of it. I gently touched the folded dollars, swallowing the knot in my throat. "Mama, does it comfort you, treating the money like this?" She nodded, tears slipping down. "I have nothing else to pray with," she whispered. "I cannot tell our family or friends the truth. All I have is these bills, like bridging a dream that we can leave." My chest ached. Her call to Ukraine had forced her to lie, painting a rosy picture of Istanbul. Now, she tried to wash away that guilt by revering the money that might free us. Over the next days, I caught myself lying to her too. If I stepped out to meet a smaller client or do a forced errand for the man at home, I would downplay how brutal it was. "It wasn't so bad," I would say, voice hollow. In truth, each encounter chipped at me, but I could not bear to add to her torment. Not when she was clutching those dollars like her last hope. Sometimes she would phone me while I was out, worried. I had feed her quick reassurances. "I am safe, Mama. Do not worry." In reality, my safety was never guaranteed. Each moment, I risked crossing the path of men like Dmitri or Sergei, or any of the 1,000 predators lurking. But I needed her to believe I had some control. Late one evening, I found her in the bedroom, phone in hand, weeping silently. I approached, heart pounding. She had dialed the relative in Ukraine again, but her trembling voice faltered. She ended the call without speaking. When she noticed me, she wiped her cheeks in embarrassment. "I couldn't do it," she whispered. "Couldn't pretend again that we're fine." A surge of pity overwhelmed me. I knelt beside her, hugging her shoulders. "It's okay," I murmured. "We'll be out of this soon, I promise." She let out a quiet sob, pressing the phone to her chest. "I keep lying. I cannot stop. I felt her despair like a physical weight. Amid her tears, she mentioned my father for the first time in months. "He would never have wanted this for us," she said, voice trembling. "My father had left us years ago, vanished from our life. A single, fleeting memory of him existed in my mind. He was no saint, but maybe had he remained, we would not have ended up in Istanbul's snares." She spoke about how she once believed traveling abroad would be her second chance at love and stability. Instead, we found ourselves entangled in a web of exploitation. "If I'd known," she rasped, "I'd have stayed in Ukraine no matter how poor we were." Despite our swirling emotions, the man at home demanded I accept another client, someone from Bakir's network. My mother could not muster a defense. She simply handed me some folded dollars for a taxi, pressing them into my palm as though giving me a blessing. "Use this if you need to run," she whispered, tears brimming. Then she glanced away, unable to face the reality of sending me off again. I stepped outside, the city's night air tasting of diesel and heartbreak. My phone buzzed. Mustafa texting me the address. A different hotel this time. My stomach knotted. It exhausted me all, but I had to keep earning to finalize our escape plan. Another lie, a deeper betrayal of my own well-being. When I arrived at the hotel lounge, I discovered the client was actually a pair of men from Kazakhstan, both visiting for business. They greeted me with forced politeness, expecting me to engage in small talk. I felt numb as I sank into a plush seat, swirling a drink I did not want. Their conversation was the usual mix of arrogance and half-assed compliments. "You speak Russian? Good, we need that." The older man smirked. "Inna, is it? Lovely name." I forced a smile, lying that I was delighted to meet them. Because that was the script. As the men prattled on, I heard my mother's voice in my head. "Are you safe, Inna? Do not get hurt." I pictured her at home, quietly folding money like prayers, tears drying on her cheeks. Something in me cracked. I realized I had been lying to her about my emotional state for weeks, maybe months. She had no real idea how battered my soul was. I had told her enough half-truths to keep her illusions intact. That realization made me want to scream. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door, hyperventilating. My reflection in the mirror was pale, eyes hollow. My lips trembled with the effort of continuing this facade. I'm living a double lie, I thought, lying to my mother that I was coping, lying to these men that I was available for their every whim. I nearly bolted right then, but a surge of survival instinct reminded me that if I did not close this deal, the man at home would punish my mother. So I swallowed my tears, reapplied a bit of lipstick, and forced a composed mask. Back at the lounge, the men hardly noticed my red eyes. They concluded the negotiation quickly, leading me upstairs. I detached from my body, as I had done many times, letting them do as they pleased for an hour of mechanical lust. All the while my mind was far away, thinking of the phone calls we had left unanswered, the lies we told back home. "This is temporary," I repeated silently, each thrust pushing me further into dissociation. Once it ended, they handed over a wad of mixed currency. I accepted it with shaking fingers, longing to fling it in their faces but knowing I needed it. The men parted with casual nods, as though we had merely wrapped up a business meeting. Perfume and lies, once again. I took a taxi home, spent and aching. My mother greeted me anxiously at the door, scanning my face. I mustered a weary smile, pressing the newly earned bills into her palm. She clutched them, an almost reverent hush. "We're closer," she said, voice trembling with brittle hope. "We can leave soon, yes?" I nodded. Yes, soon. Another lie, or maybe a half-truth. We were inching forward, but at what cost? She hurried to the kitchen, carefully folding the fresh bills, eyes closed in silent invocation. I watched her slender fingers line up the edges, pressing each fold until the paper was tight. She placed them in a container with the rest, whispering something too soft for me to catch, possibly a prayer for safety, or for redemption from the lies we lived. Her nightly ritual had become a twisted form of worship. Instead of a crucifix or rosary, we had foreign currency, each note representing nights of my degradation. The guilt in my chest flared anew. If only I could snatch those bills away and fling them into the Bosphorus. But we needed them. We needed them to break free. The next morning, the phone rang again, our Ukrainian relative calling. My mother shot me a panicked look. She answered, voice forced bright. Hello, yes, we are still fine, so busy. Ina's working, I have a nice home. My stomach twisted at her false cheer. I heard laughter from the other end, apparently excited about our success in Istanbul. My mother clutched the phone, tears threatening to slip. Yes, we have enough money. Maybe we will visit Ukraine soon. Another lie. She motioned for me to speak. I shook my head vehemently, not trusting my composure. She murmured something about me being away at a friend's place. The call ended. She set the phone down, shoulders sagging. I lied again, she said, voice hollow. I told them we might come back to show off our new life. She let out a humorless laugh, tears finally escaping. Our new life? What a joke. I approached, placing a hand on her arm. Mama, you do not have to answer their calls. You do not have to pretend. She shook her head, eyes darting with shame. But I miss home. Talking to them is like glimpsing a better reality, even if I lie about it. Her voice cracked. I cannot tell them we are drowning here. I cannot face their pity or scorn. In that moment, I saw her heartbreak laid bare. She was not lying out of pride alone. She was protecting herself from the burden of judgment, the heartbreak of admitting she'd led her daughter into this nightmare. My anger dissolved into pity, tears burning my own eyes. Yet, ironically, I was also lying to her. Each time I said, I'm okay. Each time I claimed the men weren't so bad, I wove a false narrative. My mother's call to Ukraine was mirrored by my call to her heart. I pretended to be coping for her sake, to keep her from total despair. We were mother and daughter, bound by love, but also by a web of lies, each trying to protect the other from the full horror of our daily reality. And the money, dollars folded like prayers, sat between us, a testament to those shared lies. If we told the truth, could we even continue? Or would we crumble under the weight of it? One afternoon, we both snapped under the tension. She tried to ask where exactly I had been going for these jobs. I deflected, saying, It's safer if you don't know. She insisted, tears in her eyes, that she had a right to understand. Our voices rose, a shouting match erupting in the tiny living room. She accused me of shutting her out. I accused her of refusing to see the abuse from her boyfriend. We hurled truths at each other. I said she had dragged me to Istanbul for her own illusions. She retorted that she had had no choice after Ukraine's economic collapse. We ended with both of us sobbing, the man storming in to see what the fuss was about. He tossed a cushion at the wall in frustration, telling us to shut up. But in that raw confrontation, a strange catharsis emerged. Later that night, we sat side by side on the floor, tears spent. She took my hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know how much this city has cost you. I should not push you away. I squeezed her fingers. Mama, I am sorry too. I cannot stand seeing you pretend everything is okay. We locked eyes. The silence between us held a fragile understanding. Maybe we still lied to the outside world, but at least with each other we could start telling partial truths. Days later, the phone rang once more. My mother picked up, forcibly calm. This time, the relative asked to speak to me, apparently wanting to congratulate me on my good job in Istanbul. My mother, panicking, shoved the phone at me. Just say something quick, she whispered. Heart pounding, I took the phone, struggling to adopt a cheerful tone. Hello? Yes, hi. I am fine, everything is great. My Ukrainian felt rusty, a relic of a past life. The relative gushed about how proud they were, how they had heard rumors that I was making a lot of money. My stomach twisted with shame. My gaze fell on the folded dollars on the table, so carefully stacked. Yes, I lied. I'm really happy here. I heard my mother exhale sharply. She recognized the lie in my forced giggle, the same tone she had used. We'll send money soon, I blurted, continuing the charade that we had excess funds. The relative expressed delight, praising me for being a successful young woman. I wanted to throw up. After a few more pleasantries, I hung up, face burning. My mother stared at me, tears slipping again. We both knew I had just repeated the cycle, a mother's call, a daughter's lie, two illusions feeding each other. We returned to the kitchen, where the tin box sat. She opened it, revealing the wad of mixed currency, mostly dollars. We each took a note and folded it carefully, side by side, a ritual we had not done together before. My mother's hands shook. I clenched my jaw, tears prickling my eyes. In that moment, we acknowledged that these bills were the only tangible hope we had, yet they also represented the darkest compromise of my life. We pressed them into a neat arrangement, setting them back in the tin. She inhaled shakily. "If this is our prayer, let it work." I nodded, wiping tears. "Yes," I whispered. "Let's pray it works." That night, I curled up beside her in bed, ignoring the man's angry glare from the next room. We held each other, neither speaking. No phone calls from Ukraine came, no forced errands. Just a quiet hush in which we each made a private vow. She prayed that the money would save us. I prayed that I would never have to degrade myself again to earn another bill. We might have prayed to the same God, or different ones, or maybe just cast our pleas into the void. By morning, she and I seemed more united than we had been in months. She made me tea, apologized again for the fight. I told her it was okay, that I'd do whatever it took to keep her safe. The tension with the man was still there, but for once, we had each other's backs. When the phone rang, we both froze. But it was only Zara calling, asking if I was still alive after the fiasco with Dmitri. My mother exhaled in relief. We spent the afternoon quietly discussing the coordination of forging passports, whispering about how to slip away at dawn. She wept sometimes, lamenting the lies we told our Ukrainian relatives. I soothed her, saying we would reveal the truth once we were safe. Another partial lie. Maybe we would never have the courage to confess it all. As evening fell, we faced the same old reality. The man's scowls, his demands, the city's looming threats. But now we had a fragile sense of solidarity. We were done lying to each other, at least about the big things. The mother's call to Ukraine, the daughter's lie about happiness, both had peeled away layers of denial. We stood together on the cusp of either a final plunge into darkness or a last grasp at freedom. Sitting at the table, watching her fold the dollars one by one, I realized that for all the heartbreak these bills carried, they were also our meager lifeline. Each fold was a prayer for deliverance. And as I placed a trembling hand over hers, I vowed silently, "Whatever it takes, we will leave." No more calls to Ukraine with empty boasts, no more illusions about this city, because if we continued the cycle, we would drown in lies and bruises.